everyone, it's Peter from Daydream Nation, and I've got Peter Wicks back to the channel from Wixxyleaks. How are you, Pete?
Good, mate. Yourself?
Doing well. John Clauser from My Music Corner, how are you going?
Doing good, sir. Doing good. Good to be back.
Fantastic. We are going to do a show on King Diamond, and more specifically, this album, Fatal Portrait. We're going to talk about the album, King Diamond per se, spotlight songs, and give you an analysis or our synopsis of what we think of this album with 2024 ears. So as I usually do, I'll throw to you, Pete, and tell us about your first encounter with King Diamond and your first impression of this album.
Well, I don't know how it came to be, actually. From a vague recollection, I think it was that someone at work had told me about Merciful Fate and said, I've got to hear their stuff. And it sort of stemmed from there. And by the time I went to check out Merciful Fate, King Diamond already had Fatal Portrait out. So I probably came on quite a bit late. And the first time I heard it, I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I think musically it was just, there wasn't a lot like it at the time. It wasn't going the direction of a lot of the other bands that were trying to have that devil worship imagery or whatnot. So it didn't sound like Venom or Possessed or Celtic Frost or any of those guys. It sounded more like Judas Priest or Iron Maiden musically. So I loved it. I thought it was excellent. Yeah, got sucked in by the whole thing.
Absolutely. JC, what was your first encounter with King Diamond in the day?
Yeah, I was trying to remember it. I think a buddy of mine had gotten the album on cassette, and I think it prompted me to get it like pretty soon after. I was not familiar with Merciful Fate at this point, so normally I really wasn't into bands that did the heavy occult stuff. I hadn't heard about Venom. I heard about Possessed, I think, a little bit. I liked Slayer a little bit, but that was about as far as I went. But yeah, I remember picking it up and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I could dig this. I'm not so crazy about some of the lyrical imagery, but I could dig a lot of the music. I was really impressed there. So, and yeah, and we'll get into this a little bit, but yeah, his voice is a little bit like it's an acquired taste.
Right, you hold that forward because that's definitely going to be a topic, a conversation piece.
Yeah,
in talking about King Diamond. Well, as usual, I will have to talk to this guy here. He was responsible for me getting into King Diamond in this album, one Mr. Peter Wicks. And it was this actual album, which was on high rotation on the Wicks turntable, cassette deck, ghetto blaster, whatnot. And was specifically the song The Candle. Oh my God, when I heard that, I was going, what the hell is this? So you had this song, and I'll get more into the specifics in the show, but this galloping rock song and this falsetto voice that sounded like it was just like it came off The Exorcist 2, The Heretic. It was just unbelievable. But Pete was right into it, and I got sold, and I did a bit more of a deeper dive into Merciful Fate. Don't Break the Oath. I really groove on them. And I'm a fan. I just love the musicianship of both those bands. Yeah, just got sold. But yeah, Peter Wicks, responsible again.
Sorry, mate.
Guilty. All right. So let's talk about this album. And why don't we spotlight some songs? And this will be our sort of pathway into talking about King Diamond. So, Pete, what's the first song that you'd like to spotlight? And we'll take it from there.
Well, you could say I like The Portrait. That's probably my favourite track off it. It's extremely melodical. The guitars just the twin guitars just going nuts and going. It's very reminiscent of Iron Maiden. Is how I hear the guitar work on this album, particularly in the portrait. It's funny when you hear the introductions to these songs now, like, you know, they've got this gloomy music and the voiceover in it, and it's very much taken from like Welcome to My Nightmare, you know, Alice Cooper, except you know, it doesn't sound as cool. not with 2024 ears at any rate. But yeah, just the whole imagery and everything about the portrait that's possessed, and it's got the spirit of the little girl or whatever. It just hooked me in at the time. But yeah,
that's a great song. I'll put a question to you. With his persona, what percentage do you think's Alice Cooper informing who King Diamond is? Because I see a lot of influences. How much?
Well, certainly the makeup, maybe, and some of the theatrical stuff. Although Alice Cooper was never like satanic and all that sort of stuff. He never went down that path. I mean, Alice really started all that theatrical stuff with the makeup and everything. So yeah, there's a large chunk of it. Certainly not vocals. There's no vocals that are influenced by Alice. But yeah, the whole Vincent Price intro on Black Widow comes to mind when I re-listen to this album and how they've tried to create that, which is funny because Vincent Price now, when you listen back to it, he just sounds as Camp Ayers. But at the time, when you were that age, it sounded like, ooh, this is scary stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do you think King Diamond on the scare meter was a notch above Alice? So everything's creeping to Marilyn Manson in shock rock. So you've got Alice, you've got King Diamond, then you've got Blackie Lawless type characters, and then it goes to Marilyn Manson. Do you think it was like the notch was shifting into something a little bit darker, more dangerous from Alice?
I think. See, I never saw that in King Diamond. Really, like King Diamond to me, although he was obviously trying to do it, but it to me, like the scary bands were like Venom and stuff. But they seem, not now. You know, I look back now and you think that's just theatrics, but they seemed like the scary bands at the time. King Diamond was more of a like, that's the image he was trying to project, but it didn't come across as real to me or scary. It just maybe that's the niche you wanted to be.
Is that 2024 or is that as an 18-year-old in say 86? What was your views in 86?
I think in 86 I probably thought he was I thought he was probably into it, but I didn't find it scary or anything like that. Like it was it was like a horror movie that you watch and you when you're watching it, there's bits that make you go ooh you know, but it doesn't keep you up at night.
Yeah,
but,
understand.
Will keep you up at night. You know.
Yeah.
King Diamond was never the keep you up at night type.
Yeah, sure.
Not for me at any rate. But yeah, I just thought it was cool. I thought the imagery matched with the musicianship of the band and the production, because the production at the time, it was very clean. A lot of the stuff that was coming out of the UK wasn't as clean as this. It was so it just sounded fresh at the time.
Yeah,
which is what hooked me in. So yeah.
Okay. John, do you want to do a counterpoint to the portrait? Have a few words on that one?
Well, I think the person I think of when I think of where King Diamond evolved from, I think more Arthur Brown. To me, because Arthur was before Alice.
Yes.
In my recollection. So, and Arthur was the one that was doing all the crazy. He did a lot of crazy theatrics too. So to me, I think King Diamond was almost an extension from Arthur Brown, with obviously some Alice mixed in there and probably some other things. But no, I think I thought the portrait was a good track. It was another just all between, you know, the solos between what mostly Mike really on this one. Andy, I think, has one solo in there, but yeah, a lot of good guitar work, and of course you get all these like things at the ends of the songs that's like, what? I gotta see Ma. What? What?
Yeah, well, there is a concept album
Oh yeah, yeah.
to
There.
this. There is a storyline to this, and this is something that it took me a long while to trig. That there is actually a semi-concept album feel to this. There is a storyline,
Yeah,
and
yeah. It wasn't as evident as his later albums would be. You know,
yes,
like them and Abigail and
yeah,
Conspiracy. All those were much. The whole album was all concept, whereas this was
yeah,
just a little bit there. But
yeah.
I never quite dug into it enough to to get the.
Absolutely. And when you're young and you listen to this music, it's the music that grabs you, and the lyrics come a lot later. So you gravitate to the energy, the musicianship, and then the rest sort of reveals itself over time. But
Right.
I like this song. It's just gallop metal. It just rollicks along, and it's sort of like the very best of new wave of British heavy metal. It's got that Maiden Priest feel to it. And there's also a bit of a tritone. The Devil's Chord riff prevails over it. I'm sure that's kind of deliberate. And there you've got the falsetto. And he's changing character. On YouTube, there's all these shows where you have these opera or vocal coaches where they analyze different singers. And there was this opera singer from the New York Mets analyzing King Diamond, and she was stunned. And she said, this guy, within a breath, changes character. So he'll go from this high falsetto and then he'll go into this low baritone because he's changing characters. It's like he's singing in one song 3 characters or 2 characters. And she was absolutely stunned. And she said, look, what he's doing is like up there with opera singers, but it's just a different genre.
Wow.
So, you know, the voice is an element that holds a lot of people back. The musicianship is top notch. I really think the guitar lineup of LaRock and Denner are up there with Priest and Maiden.
Yeah.
For a band that's on Roadrunner Records, if this had the push and it was on CBS, I'm talking about the 80s record labels, or Warner's or EMI, they would be up there with the Maidens and the Priests. But what was the thing holding it back? 2 things. The imagery was just too out there, too satanic, too out there, not commercial. And also the other element is his voice. So it's maybe it's an acquired taste. I can't tell. I'd be a rich man as to how many people that speak about King Diamond. I love the music, but man, that voice.
Yeah.
It'll make you knock out. And I think you look at his influences in interviews, and he cites David Byron from Uriah Heep. Now, David Byron was one that used to go into this very outer-worldly falsetto. Give you an example, July Morning. It's like King Diamond has based his career or his falsetto on that David Byron falsetto-ness. And that's prevailed over all his career. But King Diamond's just not more than that high falsetto. He does characters. He's a storyteller, and he does from the highs to the lows all within a story. And I think that's just, it's kudos. Nobody else does that.
He's still going too. I mean, I don't know how old he is now, but
Absolutely. 2009 or 2010, I'm sure some YouTube folk will correct me, had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Multiple heart attacks, and had to change his lifestyle, but he's still going strong. And last night I watched him live at the Barry or some theatre in New York, and he was sensational. Sounds magnificent. I mean, he's still doing the same vocals, and the band just sounds so crack. They're tight. But just going back to the guitar, the musicianship of this band is, there's not many I can put guitar duos that beat these guys. John, what do you think? Do you think they've got to be right up there with the Priests and the Maidens?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and even the way some of it's recorded, almost to me, could pass for Iron Maiden, really. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, yeah, Denner and LaRoque. I mean, I had never heard of Andy LaRoque before this album had come out. So, oh, of course, I never heard Michael Denner either. But my goodness, yeah, great duo.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think Andy is still with King Diamond. I don't think Denner is.
Yes. No,
They both
you're
are.
spot on. No. Denner's not in, but LaRoque is still there.
Yeah.
But the musicianship, the intricacy of the guitar lines, it's just magnificent. All right, John, what song would you like to spotlight?
Well, since we were talking about Alice Cooper, so the song I want to spotlight is the side two opener, Karen. What I'll tell you something, that riff and that groove, it just has a swagger and a swing and a strut about it. But when you imagine somebody on stage and you hear this riff, you don't think King Diamond's going to be the one up there strutting his stuff. You would think maybe a hair metal guy or an Alice Cooper or somebody like that. But King Diamond? No, that doesn't seem right. And then the lyrics kick in, which of course, anybody who's maybe delved into a little bit of the Greek mythology, who the character Karen is. Of course, he takes you across the river Styx to the land of the dead and all that kind of fun stuff. But man, of all the songs that I think has always stuck with me from this album, Karen has always been one. I have always loved this track just because of that Mickey D drum beat that he just creates such a swagger and such a strut about it. And I just always dug that about this song. And again, let's see who does the solo. Andy does the first solo, and then Mike does the ending solo on this. But again, great guitar work, great riff. Just everybody's in the pocket. King's voice is crazy on it.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about King's voice? And over time, did you just get used to it?
Yeah, you pretty much have to. I mean, if you're gonna enjoy Denner and LaRoque, to the point that I was with Fatal Portrait and the later album and a couple later albums. I mean, you really had to kind of tolerate King's voice because sometimes that high falsetto can sound a little shrilly, and then sometimes those low growly there's some shrill to some of that too. So it is an acquired taste, but it works. It works so well together. It's hard to imagine somebody else somebody else trying to sing over this music and make it work correctly. That's my take.
I guess in metal, the best metal vocalists have cut through, and boy, does he have cut through. It's sort of like right through. Pete, did you grab it? I mean, maybe just recap with his vocals. Did you like his vocals straight off the bat, or was it over time that you sort of just became used to it?
Yeah, that's the way I put it. I became used to it. I didn't like his vocals at first. I was like, God, well, who's this guy and where's he come from? It's for me, it was the music, and I've given some thought to a description of what he sounds like. To me, the way I hear his vocals is it sounds like a kid with headphones on who can't hear himself trying to sing Rob Halford, but without any sense of tune or melody. That's how I hear his vocals.
I know that was probably me back in the day. I know
you'll probably get grief for that comment, but it's just hey, that's right. But it's like sorry, mate. But
it's all right.
But yeah, but you do get used to it. You do get. I mean, there's plenty out there that can't sing. Like Bob Dylan's not a singer. I mean, he'll admit that. But it's the music that's not through, and that's his thing. It's all to do with his persona that he.
Absolutely, and over time, people come to your point of view. Like at the time, a lot of people probably derided and said, "Oh, look, he can't sing for peanuts." But as I just gave you the example, people are doing vocal coaching analysis of King Diamond.
Yes, I know.
So it's like the world is caught up
That's
And
right.
maybe all that initial impression was wrong. You know, maybe first
Maybe.
impressions aren't everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's just a recurring theme. Love the music, but King Diamond, I just cannot. Yeah, I cannot stand his voice. But
What
look,
about you? Is that
I
you?
love it. I thought it was slightly funny, as in
Yes.
kind of belly.
Yeah.
And I think that was more of a nervous laugh, sort of, what is this? But over time, it's all part of the package. I'm used to it.
For the first time you heard it?
Oh, it's just, I've never heard anything like this. Nothing. He is totally unique. So here's the bucket list of his influences, and this will explain the King Diamond voice. So he said Arthur Brown, you know, because, you know,
Yep.
coming out of Coffin, so he's got the Arthur Brown. He said David Byron, Dio, Gillan, Robert Plant, Alice Cooper. So you've got the checklist of all those ones that go for the falsetto and that sort of cut through. They're King Diamond's heroes. So there you go. I'm going to focus on the Candle, and this will be another segue into his vocal mastery. I think this is a masterpiece song. It's one of the great opener songs in any 80s metal album. I'll stack it up. So it starts off with the Gothic organ, and then you've got this ferocious Mickey D. I wouldn't call it surf rock, but it's just such a ferocious drum pattern. And, you know, this galloping riff of the guitarist. And all the way through it, King's vocals, it's triple track, double track. It's like a choir. I've always had it in the back of my mind. It's like Satanic Beach Boys. It's like Brian Wilson's been possessed by the devil, and it's come out in this song. And I just love it. I just think it's just fantastic. And we're actually going to do a little share screen, folks. Okay. So you've got the organ coming in. And that rapid fire Mickey D drumming. And then these vocals come on. It's sort of like Beach Boys. Now remember, this is the first song, folks, I ever heard. And then the vocals come in. And I'm thinking, what is this? All right. So the next bit that I want to go is to 4 minutes 22. This is where I think it's absolutely genius in the song, where it actually goes a cappella. And then you've got this trade-off from one speaker to the other where one voice is talking to another voice. Listen to this. This is just absolute mastery. Right. And then it goes into the bridge. The way it goes into the bridge back into the main theme is just magnificent. That's as good as it gets. John, what do you think? What do you think of this song?
Oh man, I mean, I'm like you. I mean, you have this crazy epic intro, you know, with almost like a little bit of a distant cousin to Toccata and Fugue in D minor, you know, and then you just have all these other things coming in. Oh man, yeah. Welcome to the world, Mickey D and Andy LaRocque and King Diamond solo stuff. I mean, that's essentially what you got here. No, it was a great opener.
This is on Roadrunner Records, right? So this is like an independent production, but it sounds $1 million.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pete, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say that the voice, you know, the Judah, you know, it's like coming out of The Exorcist or something, you know, it's
This is not a bashed out song. There's planning. They've planned it, and it's kind of like a little proggy where there's all these different key changes, and that middle bit with the a cappella is just inspired, where the band and you just hear the voice and then it goes from one to the other. It's just like a little mini symphony.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's like they're saying, like, we know the voice is out there, but we're going to shove it down your throat. It's like, because
triple tracked, not just one. Do you, John? Am I being a little bit out there, a bit cute, saying how the Satanic Beach Boys? But you understand what I'm trying to get at? It's sort of like that.
I could kind of see where you're coming from with that. I mean, Satanic Pet sounds. Well, I mean, okay, yeah, why not?
Just with the harmonies and the way,
yeah. I mean, it's not something you expect from something, from this style of music, really.
It's like a wall of sound.
It really is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is it harmonies with the rest of the band, or is it just him?
It's him.
It's just him.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, Pete. What song would you like to spotlight? Another one?
Well, the portrait, Lurking in the Dark. It was interesting. I was actually going to choose Karen as well at one stage, but that was probably the first one I really got into was Karen. Although, interestingly about Karen, it's when we're talking about a concept album, that track's not actually part of the story of the album. It's just Whereas Lurking in the Dark is kind of like the end of the finalisation of the story of is it Molly that's the little girl who's in the attic or whatever the concept is. So I like Lurking in the Dark because it kind of closes the story, if you know what I mean. So, it's
absolutely.
So, like, if you're going to have a concept album, you've got to have a decent close.
Yeah. That's for sure. Hey, one thing I want to spotlight before I throw to John is I love the album art. It just, you look like it just looks $1 million. So, and, a lot of, I mean, if you look at the genres of what this band, they say a lot of it is black metal, satanic rock, all that sort of thing. A lot of those bands that were on Roadrunner or independent didn't have the production values. It was recorded in Copenhagen in the Soundtrack studio, so they must have had a really good studio. Produced by King Diamond, Michael Denner, and Rune Hoyer. They've done a fantastic job because the separation of the instruments is just...
Yeah.
It's better than some of the, $1 million metal acts that were on mainstream labels.
Yeah.
John, do you want to have talk about the production? Anything?
I completely agree with that. I mean, that kind of was a time when I was starting to get into like the metal blade bands, and Peter and I have talked about a couple of those metal blade bands. We wish some of those bands had this kind of production. And quite frankly, they a lot of those early albums don't. They have really just the best they could do with what they've got, but for whatever reason, boy, the production was just amazing. Yeah, I mean, you just like I said, the way the guitars are recorded, the way the drums are recorded, the way King's vocals. I mean, my gosh, he's trying to do what? I mean, what is he trying to be, like the satanic Freddie Mercury? Maybe that's another possibility that came to my mind.
Yeah.
And just an absolute cracker job here. I mean, this is definitely not just something that they threw together, recorded in about 24 hours. No, there was a lot of thought and process that went into this, and it's you can definitely tell. And I kind of think it's like that for pretty much all of his albums, at least from what I've heard. I've only heard up to about Conspiracy or so. But I mean, just amazing work.
And it's amazing that this band is now kind of a bit of a draw card in America, at least, that they can sell out a 5,000 theatre. Considering in the 80s, I've read lots of stories where they toured America. They would be playing clubs where there'd be only about 100 and 200 people. And you can imagine King Diamond treading the boards with the bone cross and trying to do this big $1 million stage act on a shoestring stage. And it's over time that I think people have caught up, and he's kind of a little bit of a draw card. And to be quite frank, he's on my bucket list. I would love to see him. There's been some approaches, Pete, that to get him over to Australia, but
Really?
not to be. Yeah. He would have to come out in a big festival, like a download festival, where you have packages with other bands. So, like Download 10 years ago was probably the best bet, where they had Metallica, Slayer, and bring King Diamond in.
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't be economically viable for him to come over to us. It'd have to be part of a package.
Yeah, it'd be all old diehards, I'd imagine. People like us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But on the production, I think the thing that gets me about it, or thing that gets to me, is everything at the time was coming out of, like you said before, the new wave of British metal, and there was the American, whereas this was Danish. So nothing like anything that was coming out of the UK or the US. So production-wise, it was just had a completely different sound.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's something about European metal. The production was very clean, because I was just thinking about Halloween. Some of those early albums, John, the production values on those albums are actually spick as well.
Yeah, but weren't they on? They got signed to a decent label, though, I think.
Down
like RCA.
I'm talking down the track, but early. Those early albums. Yeah.
Now I have to look back.
Like Walls of Jericho, that was off a, I think Steamhammer or SPV or one of those labels. But just thinking, Destruction, that's another one.
Yeah.
Production values on those albums, fantastic. Not big budget, but whatever they have been able to squeeze out on such a shoestring budget is just, it runs rings around that reverb, too much reverb, gated drum sounds of some of those American acts in the 80s. So,
and they just sounded unique. The stuff that was coming out of Europe was unique. It just didn't sound like the bulk of what you were hearing it from elsewhere.
Yeah, it's unique because a lot of it wasn't just fast cars, women, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It was about mythology. It was horror themes. It was about fairy tales, war. It was a lot darker. A lot of it was, you could probably put a lineage to classical music,
Easily.
Power metal. Power metal is so popular in Europe. And, I can sort of see that this band flirts with a bit of power metal, that high energy, the melody. I mean, let's face it, this album, it's the melody that has hooked us in. It's the melodic lines.
Yeah. That's what it was for me. That's what pulled me in. It was just like,
yeah. JC, got another song that you want to talk about?
Well, let's talk a little bit about Dressed in White, the side A closer. Now, is it just me, or is there parts of this song that kind of reminds you a little bit of, I don't know, something that was on an Iron Maiden album? I think it was reminds me a little bit of the Duelists. Is that just a really far stretch, or is it, or
no?
If you think back, it maybe not as maybe this song is a little brighter sounding than the Duelists, but boy, that feel and that gallop reminded me of the Duelists. I don't know.
Yep.
But again, you get Mike leading off with a really good theme that carries on through the album, and then the song rather, and you get eventually Andy and Mike then are trading off. You get, again, I think just it was a good side closer. Just a nice gallop sound, but it definitely kind of harkened to some Maiden a little stronger than a lot of this album.
What do you think could have been done to improve the commercial fortunes of this band, get them out of the underground, but into more of the mainstream? Because as I said earlier, you look at stuff like Marilyn Manson in the 90s, and which is was a lot more stronger. Was this band ahead of their times? Maybe King Diamond.
Maybe a little.
I don't know. Marilyn Manson, I don't see in the same vein really as.
No, persona. That's what I'm talking about. Musically different, but I'm talking about that persona.
I think Marilyn Manson to me is supposed to be the contradiction of American society. Hence the name, the serial killer versus with the model. Whereas I think King Diamond was just trying to come off as satanic.
No. But that's the thing. He has actually said in interviews that he does follow Satanism. But he treats it very seriously, and I think that's a lot of the darkness that comes around him. And John, I don't think that would be kind of palatable in the Bible Belt or the southern states of America, would it? I'd like to get your perspective from what you've heard, and from the American perspective.
Yeah, from the American. I mean, I think what I've heard from King Diamond lately is I think he doesn't quite. I don't think he quite follows the whole Satanism thing quite so much as he probably did. I think maybe the heart attack kind of gave him a different perspective of life altogether. I don't think he believes in anything per se, but I don't think he's, I still think he has his, and again, people in the comments, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he follows anything that seriously anymore. But I think he's just happy to be alive, especially after that heart attack, because that was a pretty heavy duty one from what I understand. So,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, like I said, for me, I think to answer why he never broke bigger is I think because of his imagery. I think Iron Maiden was probably going to be about as big as anybody was going to get, pushing like the Number of the Beast and stuff like that. I mean, even Slayer never got the numbers like Metallica that Metallica ever did or anything like that. So, Rob didn't come out of the closet, so that's why Judas Priest was still going good. So not that would have made a big difference, but I think because of his imagery, that horror, basically a Stephen King book to music, more or less. I mean, that's not going to be your normal metal fan's niche, I guess. Not everybody's a horror fan, so that could be it. I don't know. That would be my thought. But yeah, I mean, down here in the Bible Belt, that's not gonna, that ain't gonna fly too well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's regarded Satanism as a philosophy, and he does follow the teachings of Anton LaVey, the Satanic Bible. But yeah, I notice a lot of his more modern recent interviews, he has toned that down. He's married. He's got a kid called Byron, have to be named after David Byron. And I think he's changed his lifestyle. But there was definitely, my understanding was, there was definitely a dark edge. And that's why I found it interesting. Like, Pete, you didn't think he was scary, but to a lot of folk,
I'm sure.
That know a little bit more about him, they find him scary indeed. But to me, it's always been the music. It's the music.
Always the music. Yeah, the music hooks you in really quick.
Yeah.
I mean, mind you, I dare say his voice would have also been a factor in not being as, because it is, like you say, an acquired taste. It's something that the average person, if they heard it come on the radio, would probably quickly change the station. It's at first listen, it is an acquired taste. It's well, it's a bit like fingernails down the chalkboard.
I'll give you an example of another band that sort of has been influenced by King Diamond, but have sheened it, made it commercial and palatable to the masses. And I'm talking about Ghost. There's a flirtation with the Satanism and the occult, but it's a little bit more, the voice is a bit more palatable. I think the voice is the big killer here. If you don't have a palatable voice, you won't get played on radio.
Yeah.
And you don't have that commercial cut through. But again, King Diamond, a lot of people, it's one of those bands, I'm calling an over the course of time type of band where people have warmed up and appreciate that his voice is part of the music.
Well, if you like the voice, it's completely unique, and so you're going to be hooked on it, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
There's nothing else that certainly at the time that matched it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about Halloween. I like that. That's got a sludgy, evil riff, and it's got a bit of groove. And I want to really put a spotlight on Timmy Hansen on bass and Mickey D. Mickey D, wow, what a drummer. He's powerhouse. He'd have to be one of the top three metal drummers in the world. What do you think, folks?
Yeah,
I would,
yeah. I mean,
I would go with that.
Like he went on to be in Motorhead. Like that's play with Motorhead's not a bad thing. It's you know. You
And Scorpions now.
Scorpions, yeah. So, but Motorhead for me, it's like if you're playing in drums in particular for Motorhead, then you know amateur. Yeah.
Power trio.
Yeah.
John, what do you think of this song?
I mean, I think this would probably have been another track I could have talked about. I mean, because again, you get all this evil stuff. All the different evil riff, evil intro, evil everything about it. I mean, and Halloween is kind of for some is looked at as an evil day, I guess. Again, here in the Bible Belt, yeah, we do things a little differently with Halloween, or at least they want to treat it differently. They do the trunk or treats or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's still a great song. It has nothing to do with the concept story that follows part of the album. It's just kind of like an extra track, kind of like Kieran is. But yeah, it's just another good track, another solid one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think top to bottom, this album's an absolute thumper. I think it's one of the best 80s heavy metal albums. I will defend it. So, Pete, any final words that you want to say about this album?
Well, it's one of the actual, all my vinyl, unlike you who's got tons of vinyl there behind you, I got rid of all my vinyl, which I'm forever kicking myself for, but it's actually one of the ones that I actually still have. So, hang on. That one. Pardon
Love
it. Yeah.
He did that especially for John, just to, get him on his toes.
Love it.
Yeah, it's. I forgot what the question was now. What was the question, Pete?
What are we doing a show about? Neil Diamond? No,
right.
King Diamond.
That's right. Sweet Caroline. It's. I don't know. I think it stands the test of time. This album, it's the production and the sound on it. It still sounds fresh when you listen to it now. It still sounds fresh, like it could have been done by a band and put out a year ago. Not how. God, I hate to think how many years ago it is now. 86, whatever. Cool. Yeah, but yeah, it still sounds fresh. So. Yeah. So to me, that means it stands the test of. Another thing I'll say about it that we talk about Alice Cooper and whatnot. Black Sabbath, like they had all the demonic imagery and whatnot, but they never went to this level of.
They never went that far. No.
Yeah, exactly. So they sort of touched on it because that was their niche. They were like the dark, scary band, and where I think he's tried to take that to a whole other level. So. Yeah.
John, final thoughts about this album?
It was fun to listen to this again. It's been a while since I really sunk my teeth into this album, and so it was. It's been fun, just rocking out to these songs again. Like I said, I had it on my Walkman quite a lot back in the day. So it's just been a lot of fun, and it's. I know we said a lot about King Diamond's voice, but listening to it now with 2024 ears, it's tolerable. I can handle it. It's not as grating as it probably once was, but you come to really appreciate the talent and just the mastery of just how everything was put together on this album.
Yeah,
I mean, it's that's really what it comes down to. I mean. You just didn't get that. You just didn't get these kind of productions in 1986. This was one of those dime a dozen kind of things, and it's saying something.
Yeah, well said. All right, well, what do I think of this album? I think it's a masterpiece. I love it. I think it's one of the best 80s albums. It's the freshest sounding it sounds like 2024 to me.
Mm.
It has not dated. And I like King Diamond's voice. It's taken me a long time, but it's like a satanic Brian Wilson. I love it. And I just think the musicianship and the songcraft is just 10 out of 10. I love it. I think it's just one of the great albums. So there you have it. We have given our synopsis of Fatal Portrait, King Diamond. Thank you, Peter Wicks. You can see him on Wixxyleaks. A lot of things happening. And John Clauser, My Music Corner, the ongoing series of Judas Priest. Check out the shows. Always things happening. And please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Tell us what you think of King Diamond, what your favorite King Diamond album, or maybe Merciful Fate. But one thing's for sure, you'll see these lads in 2024 doing more metal, more rock, analysing something or other. We'll catch you later. Cheers.